Okay, then shall we go ahead and get started? Welcome, everyone. This is Rebuilding Rails. We're going to be going over Chapter 5 here, which is going to be covering basic models. And for some background there, what we mean by basic models is not necessarily databases yet, but backing this from static files and kind of looking how active model, active record kind of works behind the scenes. So that all said, let's go ahead and skip over to some code real quick. Okay. So it looks like over in rulers, and we are on page 72 of the book right now. So we'll go ahead and go over to the rulers gem spec. Let's make that a little bit bigger for folks. Yep, and as always, feel free to ask questions whenever. Okay. And we can move that comment down here along with this. Okay, so the book mentions adding multi-JSON here. To be fair, there is a built-in JSON. OJ is a little bit faster, and I know there are multiple different ways of handling JSON in Ruby, so we'll add this for now and look into that. Okay. So it looks like what we're going to be doing is going back over to best quotes over here and then creating a DB folder and quotes and JSON. So let's make a new folder called DB. And we probably could make this with multiple at once, but we'll just do this for now. And one.json. Okay. So you got that over there. Let's double check what we got here. Rulers, lib, rulers, and then file model. So first off, let's get some of this code down and then we can figure out what we're up to. And I finally think I found which one of these things was, no, looks like it's not off. Oh well. Yeah, something loves autocorrecting everything I'm doing in here, so I'll have to find which VS Code extension that is. File name. Okay, so we got all that. Yeah, let's go ahead and put an underscore there. Okay, so we have a few things in the book here. We'll go ahead and copy that. Okay. So one thing people don't tend to know about Ruby files is you could operate on them as if they're strings, sure, but there are a whole bunch of handy methods, and let's just take this off here so we get the latest. There are a whole bunch of methods for working with paths and other things like that. Like let's say that we were to take a look at split. Those will give you kind of the file names, directories, base names, other things like that. So if you are dealing with files, don't treat the paths as strings. If you use file instead, you're going to get a lot more utility out of it. Anyway, so back to that. base name. Okay, and this is just more referencing all of these. So it's going to give us back ruby.rb. If we pass a suffix, that's going to take it off of there. So .rb would give us Ruby in this case. And then we're going to read that file, and then we are going to load that file as JSON. So some people might not know what this one does. So in Ruby, if you've ever seen something like, let's say, array is equal to 1, 2, 3, array 0 would return back something like, let's say, 1, which is the first index of that. What you might not know is that this is actually a method. Which takes in an argument, which is the index here, or in this case, an argument which we call the name. So yes, that is a method, which means you can change it, or you can make custom implementations for your class, which is very, very useful in a lot of cases. Okay. Same thing with the bracket equals. And right now I'm just copying directly from the book, and we're on page 74, 75. Okay. So a couple things we can do with this in particular. The first thing is that we can have an implied begin here, drop the rescue back, and do this. The other thing is that normally with Rails, find is going to raise an exception if you don't happen to find something. So what I'd almost prefer to do here and noting that this is very tied to quotes directly right now. So let's do that, which will take out some of that requirement for rescue. Now, in general, I would avoid doing this right here, because what that's going to do is that's going to rescue everything. And by everything, I do mean literally everything. Instead, you might want to rescue something like file not found, or in the case of active record, record not found, or something like that. So you do want to keep this in tight, because otherwise you might be rescuing something you don't intend and covering up behavior that is otherwise bad. For now, though, we'll leave that alone. This is all on page 75. Right. The other thing about file.split over here is that it knows how to deal with operating systems. If you're on Windows, you'll know that we're using backslashes instead of forward slashes, or Unix or Mac, you're using other ways of doing that. Let's see here. So this is entirely so we can get values out of that. Like, let's say that we were to go back over to 1.json. Let's just copy this so we have a reference of that. And quote that out. So if this was the case, we're going to be loading this hash into @hash, which is our representation of this. So when we're doing this, we got hashed name to string. So let's say that we passed in, say, submitter as a string or as a symbol or something else, we're going to get that. Now there might be a case of using fetch here. That way it says that that key doesn't exist and gives us an error. But in this case, I'd say that's fine. Well, that's fine, rather. Okay. So the book mentions that we have that, which allows us to get each one of these keys. But sometimes you might want to do something like, say, model.submitter instead, which the book says we're going to be covering in a second. So we'll leave that alone for now. Okay. Yep, and the book also mentions on page 76, our find returns nil in this case. Ruby is going to raise a file not found exception, so if we were to rescue this, I'd probably use file not found instead here. Not that, let's see here. File read, where is that exact one? Read. That's probably an IO. Anyway. Oh, yes. So IO happens to underlie file and a lot of other IO stream-like things. So you'll probably find a lot of those methods in there. Okay, so going back over to the book here, let's go back to that quotes controller over here. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll also need a view for this. App views quote. We'll go ahead and grab some of this over there. Okay. So I'm going to install this. That way it picks up multi-JSON and everything else there. Got it. Okay, let's get this running real quick. Then go to the site that was mentioned. So 3001. And see what exactly we're getting here. Okay, so we got an oops there. So let's go debugging Splunky a little bit here. Rulers, model, file model. File model, okay. I probably did not put file model in the base here. so let's go back up in the book and make sure that I've done that properly. Rulers, lib, rulers. Yep. So we'll go ahead and rerun that. Okay. Let's see what we got here. So we got file model. So we can do that real quick. So it gets to initialize, it gets to that. So go ahead and do that. Let's see what we get here. Okay, so we got quotes, quote one, that's not a problem. So we know that's good. Great. So let's see what we get here. Okay, so quote one is nil, so something is wrong there. It's probably the file that exists, if I had to bet. We'll take this, go ahead and put that in there. And let's see what we got. Probably right. Yep, I managed to get myself there. Good call. That's a problem if I start renaming things and get caught by myself. Aha, okay, there we go. Thank you there. Yep, that's always pesky sometimes because you can't exactly tell. Okay, so let's clean up some of this stuff real quick. Okay, so we got that. Let's see what we got. Okay, so we're back to quote one. We got that. Let's see here. Okay, so we are on page 77 of the book. Going back to ruler lib controller. Let's see here, rulers controller. Got that one. Okay, so book mentions seeing rulers model file model is a little bit lengthy here. So if we're going back to quotes controller, we can probably take some of this stuff off. Yep. Okay. So going back over here, we can also get a .all. So one fun thing here is this is equivalent to dir.glob, and if you're ever looking for files, this comes in real handy. So we take a look at glob here, which will give us a little bit more information. We can use various patterns. We can also make this go recursive, which is ***/*. So matches directory recursively. Those can be really useful if you're trying to handle a whole bunch of files and search through things. But in our case, we just want any one of the JSON files like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Okay, so if we go back to the quotes controller, technically we could take this off, but we will be nice and do that instead. So we have that. We're going to want an index over here. So let's go back to views. I'm betting it'd be similar to this one, so let's see what we got. Okay, so we can just take this off real quick. We don't need the wrapping P then. Nor do we need this comment up here. Personally, I prefer the indentation here instead of spacing that, just so it's clear what's inside of what, but preference. I don't think that, okay. Then we're going to take a look into create. So we don't need find, we don't need all. Let's minimize some of these just so we have a little bit of extra space up here. Okay. We'll just copy this over. Man, PDFs do not like to copy. Okay, typing it out we are. Okay. Actually, tell you what, just to shorten this. have those three attributes. Let's go and copy them. So personally, I like fetch versus the hash or, just because if you take this off, then it's going to say I couldn't find that attribute. So we have that. We have files. We can copy from right here. Okay, so we have the names of the files. So what we're doing here is trying to get the name of the file, map that to that. So what we're doing is making those an integer, since those are 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. What we want to do is say get the highest index. That way we can add 1 to that, which is what we're doing in the next line. Okay. Then we're going to open a file in writing mode with that. So I have mentioned this earlier in a few of the other videos, but if you end up using this or this, all this white space to the left there, all that ends up also getting written to the file. So instead, if you use squiggly over there, that's going to be a lot easier to work with, because that's going to take all the stuff to the left and up to the least amount of indentation here. So in this case, and let's just copy this real quick. That's most of the way there. Actually, yes, we still need the quotes. Well, if we're doing that, though, why not just... Yeah, we do have multi-JSON there. Because we're not really doing anything novel to that. Because otherwise we're just writing out the same content again, and hash JSON is going to give us back the same thing. Okay. So we got that. So let's go back over to the quotes controller. And grab this. forget commas? I probably forgot commas. Yep. One of these days. Okay, so we can go ahead and boot that back up. Okay, so create had an error in there. Let's see what we got. Don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Or that, or that. Okay. Okay, so we don't get to that point. So let's go back into File Model. Okay, so we have that. Names ID. And tap again is kind of something that allows us to take a look at something in the side. So let's go ahead and restart this. It might just be that I didn't reload all the gem changes. Okay, so what do we got? Quotes. Oh, right, I didn't name it creates. That would help. Old habits from Rails. Okay. So we got that, and then we have the quote over here. What was that? Was it JSON pretty generates? Oh, right, I have an example literally right there. That does help too. Okay, so file model, we could technically do this, but let's do JSON.pretty generate instead. That way we have something a little bit nicer. So we don't need some of this debugging code now, so let's get rid of that, and that. Save that. Just make sure we got reload on there. Okay. So let's reload that. We have 3.json. Okay, so that's the difference, is that this one, all in one line, kind of hard to read. This one, we can actually do something with just from a glance. Anyway, preferences more than anything. Okay, so that looks like we're reviewing some of this stuff. Probably a few exercises around updating. Let's see here. So don't really go into the fun part of this. Okay, tell you what, let's take a little bit of a detour here and make a where method, which should be fun. So first thing we're going to do is get that. Second thing is we're going to do all.select. And then we're going to say all string query params happen to be, let's say, model key double equal match value. Then let's just make a quick thing here in the quotes controller just so we have something extra here. Attribution me. Let's do that. From me, attribution me. Okay, restart that. Let's see what we have done wrong here. We'll close quotes from me. File mode, file model. Okay. Yeah, that's a problem with some of the constant loading stuff. That's going to get me in trouble. Let's see what we got. Quotes from me, self.where, query params. Let's put that there. We go back to file model. Query params. Quotes action from me. And just for the sake of seeing this, it's even running. Okay, so it gets there. It gets into where. But it does not want to get into the where. File model all, file model where. Let's make sure that's actually running right. That's not fun. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. Let's see if we can get this to run. question is, where is that oops coming from? Just so I at least have that I can see. Undefined method where? I mean, you're right there, so file model.create, file.where. I mean, it exists for sure. Yep, I'm trying to do something slightly clever and fun, but it is misbehaving a little bit. So the error is that file model.where doesn't exist, though I know it exists, which is interesting. So now we have that for sure. Let's go back over here. Still doesn't like where. Rulers model, file model, where. Self.where. W-H-E-R-E. Yep. Okay. When you can't beat it, time to pry it. Okay, fine. Binding out of IRB. I don't want to mess with pry right now. Okay. I'll find create const missing. Have I just not saved this? I mean, you all see this method right here, right? Man, Ruby hates me today. Where to? Nope, not exit that. Ruby's being weird today. There I'm doing something exceptionally stupid. Cannot load such a file, Rubocop. Where am I requiring Rubocop? Oh, okay. I see where it is. Do you all see it? That's subtle. Nesting is fun. So the problem is I'm one level of indentation off. Okay, stupid me. Whoopsie. We got that, we got that, we got that. So we're going to happen to look right here. Oh, there's a method right there. Okay, we found it. Whoopsie. Silly things. Okay, now it works. Okay, so we don't need that. We don't need that. So this allows us to get a where clause running, but there are a few more interesting things we can do there. Like, for instance, if we happen to flip this order around, we could do now you might wonder why you would want to do that instead of the first one. Yep, it's a file with a single class and it has a bunch of nesting. So, yep, that's kind of on me for not looking at it and getting one level of indentation off. But those things are subtle sometimes. So, why triple equal? Triple equal is real fun. So let's go over to an IRB real quick. So I wouldn't use triple equal explicitly in most cases, but it's really fun because you could do something like, say, ABC is triple equal to that. String is triple equal to that. A lot of things are triple equal to that. But the point being here, this is really useful for making a query-like language. But this is also a little bit, so here's where we're going to go very well off the beaten path and start to get into something a little bit fun. So pattern matching. Pattern matching is very, very, very relevant to this. So let's say we have file model right here. We have all the self methods, but we could also get something like, say, deconstruct keys. So this is the pattern matching interface, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So typically in this, there are a couple of cases for pattern matching. Keys is equal to nil means return all keys. Otherwise, have a subset of that. That's an option if you really want to optimize. Like, let's say you have a key, it's really expensive. You probably don't want to compute it. So you could do something like, say, hash is equal to this. Hash expensive is equal to keys are nil, which means we want to include everything, or keys not include. Anyway, you get the point there. But for this specific one, we don't really care. What we do care about, though, is we have hash up here, which is getting loaded, and then we could just return back transform those keys to symbol. So we're not actually using keys. So the reason I do this is because pattern matching is going to want to use symbol keys in this case. So let's go back over to where. Hit a binding.irb there. So we don't actually care about that. Let's take this out. Let's uncomment that. So it'll still run this thing here, but we can play with it in the meantime. Okay, so we can reload this. We're back in IRB. And then we can say all models is equal to all. That way we have that. All models.select. And then _1 is the first implied parameter there. We could say in, let's see here, what exactly were the submitter? Attribution, okay. Boom, and then we have that. So we effectively have a query language inside of here, which is very, very potentially easy or fun to use. So let's say that we happen to save this as 4. Save that, and then instead of all models, we'll just use all. That way it just reloads that. So you'll notice that me2 is also included there. That's because every single one of these values is using triple equals behind the scenes to get that thing, which is really, really useful. So for me, I like making query languages using either triple equals or pattern matching, and adding this simple line over in this allows us to do exactly that. So that's kind of why I like it, is because in a couple of seconds, we effectively have an entire query language that we can work on top of for getting through params or other things like that. But anyway, that's another subject. So I think that's about all we had in some of the book, but we'll stop a little bit for questions, see if anyone has anything they're curious about. Maybe we can dive through more pattern matching, maybe we can dive through a bunch more things, but up to you all. Anything you're curious about? take out this binding.irb. That way I don't forget about it, because I guarantee you I will. And we'll just leave that in there. Okay. And that should about do it. If you do have any more questions, feel free to join us on the Discord channel. And any reason not to use the class self pattern here? No, not really, particularly. It's just more of the book had it this way, so I was copying the book, because every time I don't copy the book, I end up making a typo and getting myself into trouble. But what they're talking about here on the class error self here is we could do this, put that in there, indent all of this, and then take all of these over. So we could do that, yes. Personally, I like doing it myself because it makes it a little bit easier to track what exactly are singleton methods versus methods which are from the class instance. Oh, right, find is also in there. Let's take that, put that in here, and take that off. Got it. Okay, there we go. Yep. Personal preference. I mean, honestly, a lot of my personal preference on things happens to be whatever the current code base I'm in. I try and emulate that as much as possible. Whenever I'm doing things myself, very much I'm probably going to do exactly that pattern. Yeah, so it's kind of whatever people are currently using, I'm probably going to use. In this case, I'm just trying to stay semi-close to the book. Now, as far as the where method here, though, there are a lot of times where I end up making some sort of query language or something like that, so pattern matching comes in a ton of handy for those things. And there's a recent effort that we've been doing a lot to try and add those to core classes. Like recently we had regular expressions, which are going to get a pattern matching interface in them as well. And I'm going to write up an article probably in a little bit here. So the idea is if we had a regex, and don't judge me on my IP regex for right now. Let's see if I can remember this. I mean, it's not technically accurate, but close enough for the sake of demonstration. We can hop over here. I mean, technically that's not correct for all of these things. Let's see here. Okay. So going back to a question more relevant to the book, how can we achieve rendering views automatically for actions? Let's go back to one of these controllers real quick. Okay, so each one of these quotes controllers is going to go through this. So render is going to look for app, views, controller name, view name. So we have that. Let's see here. And every one of those actions is going to be route based. So if we take a look back at routing, this is where we would probably look if we are trying to do that. So we have controller, action, and after. Let's go ahead and rerun the application real quick and get into that. Okay, so I have an initialized. Anyway, we have controller quotes action from me. So let's see here. We have controller class and action. So routing has that. Get controller and action, I believe, was called in the head of here. And then this is back to that. So we have controller.send action over here. So if we were to want to do something like that, I would probably put it in here. We have controller.send action, which inside of here, you probably call render. We'd assume you call render. Okay, fine. But if we were to say something like an implicit render, that would probably be roughly where we would add it, is controller send action. We'd go to the quotes controller over here. I'm going to delete this monster. Okay, so let's see here. Quotes controller, new quote. We have that. Controller. There it is. So we have that. Called render explicitly is equal to true. Called render explicitly. There's probably a prettier way to do this, but I'm going to hack this on the fly. So the idea is that if you call render, it's going to set this flag. And if it doesn't see that flag, well, render was not called, so we can probably go based on the action name and render that instead. So let's see what we got here. Controller call, render, file model. Nope, not file model. Don't need that. Don't need that. Do need that. Okay, so controller send action. So let's make something quotes controller. Let's make my view in there. Go ahead and take this. Save that as my view. Don't need that either. Okay, so we have that. We have that. Called render explicitly. And there should probably be something we do after some of these actions. Then I would put it in here. If controller dot unless controller dot rendered, let's add that over here. Put that in there. Then we can say controller dot render action. Let's see if this works. I have a feeling there might be a few things a little bit hacky with it, but we won't judge. Okay, yeah, okay, that does work. So that's effectively how you do it, is put a hook somewhere inside the render method to say, yes, I did call render. If not, then imply from the action name what exactly we want to do. In this case, send the action, and if the controller did not render, use that same action name to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm not sure if the book really covered that one either. It's a little bit more of an out of the way thing, but we can figure it out. Okay. Do we have anything else we'd like to dive into while we're here? Anyway, I'll probably get back to that regex example and write up an article a little bit later tonight because I just got merged for Ruby 3.2. But past that, we will probably leave it there. So thanks so much for your time, everyone. And we'll probably call it a day there. Feel free to ask any more questions in the Discord. I'll always be around, or someone should be over there to answer any questions. Well, thanks for your time and have a great day.